Let's begin the Bus Operations Committee meeting. Before we start, I've been informed that we have no public speakers. That being said, I have a motion. Let's have a motion to approve the minutes from the September 24th meeting. They've been moved. Is there a second? Seconded. Any changes or comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. There are none. Are there any changes to the work plan?
Yes, Chairman Loader, there are. There are several changes to the plan. First of all, we've revised the work plan in accordance with the approved resolution in September to reflect the change in the committee structure, where the bus committee will be merged into the transit committee effective in January. Therefore, we've removed all 2013 bus committee work plan items, and they're going to be incorporated into the 2013 transit work plan. Secondly, the November 2012 annual review and adoption of the Bus Operations Committee charter was removed from the work plan. And finally, the report on efforts undertaken to address areas of underutilization of minorities and women with an MTA bus will now be presented in the December 2012 cycle, similar to the other agencies.
Darrell Irick is out today. In his place, Tom Del Sorbo will give the report.
Okay. Good morning, Chairman Loader and members of the committee. I just want to note the following points about the remainder of today's agenda. The Bus Operations Committee book contains operational and financial data that covers both the October and November committee cycles. Today, our talking points will focus strictly on the most recent statistical performance through the month of September and the 12-month period that ends September 30th. Our procurement agenda includes procurements that were originally scheduled for the October cycle, as in addition to November's procurements. Now, we'd like to give the floor to John Kivlahan. Before he does speak and provides the operations report, we would just like to ask him to speak for a couple of minutes about bus's experience during Superstorm Sandy. That's quite a word. I just want to say that John was leading the operations effort during the entire weekend preceding Sandy and tirelessly throughout the entire week, and he did an awesome job, and he just needs a few minutes to just give some sense of the bus experience.
Good morning. As Tom noted, before I get to the performance data, I'd like to take a few minutes to share with you how we weathered the storm and how proud I am of all of our employees. Our planning truly began months ago with simulations and desktop exercises. Our specific preparations for this storm started a week in advance. As we got closer, we removed all our equipment from the Far Rockaway and Meredith Avenue depots because of their propensity for flooding. 6 other depots throughout the system were partially evacuated throughout the storm. It is important to note that we provided full service right up until the 0 hour and had over 1,000 employees ride out the storm with us. I'm happy to report we did not lose one single piece of revenue equipment. This was all because of our extensive planning and preparations, as well as the response of our employees to move equipment to higher ground. I'll also share that 2 of our facilities that we were most concerned about, Meredith and Far Rockaway, did sustain moderate to heavy damage and are currently out of service. We are supporting their routes with service from nearby locations. Our facilities division is confident that the Meredith Avenue Depot in Staten Island will be fully operational by January, and that the transportation functions will return to the Far Rockaway Depot at the same time. Maintenance for the Far Rockaway buses will continue to be performed at other locations. I'm also happy to report that through the sheer dedication of all our employees, we were able to start restoring our service only 7 hours after the storm ended. And only 9 hours after that, we were able to restore a full schedule. This was made possible because 4,500 additional employees reported to work within hours of the storm's end. This included, just to name a few, our road operations group, who surveyed the roads to make sure they were safe to travel on, and if they weren't, implemented detours to keep service moving. The maintenance personnel who prepared buses to return to service, and of course our bus operators, those that deliver our product to New York City every day. It is important to note that our employees face the same challenges that every New Yorker had to. Their homes were pummeled by wind and rain. They lost power, and their families needed them to be there. But they all understood what their jobs required them to do and were ready to serve our customers. Make no mistake, we were faced with many hurdles. We rerouted buses because underground river crossings were impassable. We implemented shuttle service to replace critical subway service between downtown Brooklyn and Manhattan. We continue to operate a long-term shuttle between mainland Queens and the Rockaway Peninsula to replace the subway that was halted because the bridge across Jamaica Bay was severely damaged. We operated shuttle buses on Election Day in those areas hardest hit so that residents would have an opportunity to exercise their right to vote. And additionally, we provided a peak of over 200 buses to OEM and NYPD to assist in their efforts. In closing, I'd like to thank all our employees at every level who performed admirably and put us in a position of being the leading edge to return New York City to normalcy. And if you don't have any questions, I will continue to our September performance report.
John, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, just on the subject of the buses being up within was the 7 hours of the storm. I know that I mentioned this to you privately, and I'll say it to everybody. Going around surveying the damage that occurred on Staten Island, which has been well documented by this point, to see the buses operating was truly an inspirational effect. I mean, there was very little happening in the roads, and to see MTA buses back at work while we were still cut off with no ferry service, with no bridge operations, to have the buses rolling, I think was important to the spirit of to Staten Island, certainly all of New York. So I commend you guys for that effort, and terrific job. Thank you.
I'd like to second Alan's comments. The work of everybody involved on the bus side of the shop was extraordinary. It went far beyond anything anyone expected. The fact that it was up and running within 7 hours, fully operational within 9 hours, was extraordinarily and duly noted. In fact, it became quite interesting that every chance any other governmental agency needed resources, buses was always there, whether it was Election Day or OEM or the police department, the fire department, various different entities within the state government. You guys were always there, and you never hesitated in 1 second, and for that I have to thank you a lot. And for your employees who risked their lives and left their family, and actually many of them stayed during the storm, because all of them knew that they needed to get the system back up and running again. I said publicly then, and I'll reiterate it now, I don't think I've ever come across a bunch of employees who loved their job so much that they wanted to get it back up and running again, and for that I congratulate all of you and all of them. Thank you. John?
The performance highlights for the month of September 2012 and the past 12 months are on pages 9 and 10 of the committee book. I'll start with fleet reliability. For the month of September, the combined MDBF was 5,146 miles, or 64% greater when compared to the September 2011 levels. This is an historic achievement, as it is the first time performance at the regional bus level was over 5,000 miles. Based on preliminary data, next month will be the second time. When looking at our performance over a rolling 12-month period, the combined MDBF was 4,341 miles, or an improvement of 31% when compared to the prior 12-month period. This was achieved despite having 20% of our fleet over 12 years old and having an average age of 7.5 years. We are attributing these improvements to our focus and investment in our preventative maintenance program, particularly on the buses in the fleet that have been in service 3 or more years but have not reached their 12-year useful life threshold. Next, I'll talk about our service indicators for the month of September. The percent of scheduled pullouts for the AM and PM peak periods were 99.7% and 99.9%. up 0.7 and 0.5% respectively. The percent of completed trips was 99.2, up 1%. When looking at our performance over a rolling 12-month period, AM and PM pullouts were 99.1 and 99.5% respectively, improvements of 0.5 and 0.3%. The percentage of completed trips was 98.7%, an improvement of 0.7%. That completes the operations report for September. Are there any questions?
Steve?
I'd like to introduce Wayne Galante, who will be covering for Steve Adele and the safety report.
Thanks, John. Our comments on September's customer and employee safety performance refer to the results listed on page 11. On a regional basis, the 12-month rate for combined bus collisions per million miles traveled across the two bus agencies is 6.1% lower in the right direction than it was in the prior 12-month period. The 12-month rate for regional collision injuries per million miles is also 6.1% lower in the right direction. For the current reporting period, customer accidents and customer accident injuries continue to be up on a 12-month basis. It is important to note that both of these indicators have significantly improved over what was reported at the September committee meeting. The increase in customer accidents, which was reported to be up 12.4% in September, is now at 6.5%. The increase in customer accident injuries, which was reported to be up 12.2% in September, is now at 6.8%. Both of these categories showed significant improvement when comparing September 2012 to September 2011. Prior to reporting on employee lost time accidents, I want to advise the committee that in conjunction with the Transit's Office of System Safety, we identified a small number of employee accidents in NYCT that were not accounted for in the 12-month average noted in prior monthly safety reports. These accidents are now incorporated into the report data, and the 12-month average rate for employee on-duty lost time accidents is 3.7% lower on a regional basis. This improvement resulted from the positive results experienced at both MTA Bus Company and New York City Transit. To maintain performance improvement in this area, we are continuing the work of our Oversight Working Group, which has focused on mitigating the occurrence of injuries through top-down investigation of each report of injury, increased safety awareness campaigns, as well as identification of the root cause of accidents that had occurred. This concludes our monthly safety report update. Are there any questions?
How do you have a regional decline of total ridership of about 2.5% and a fare box revenue decline of about twice that? How does that happen? It looks like it's about 4.9% for September, but why is the difference so great?
Where are you? Which, page 12.
Is minus 2.6% in ridership, and the regional fare box revenue is minus 4.9%.
Well, to some extent depends on the average fare, and September is also a quarterly close where we actually get adjustments which will probably come in the following month. But generally it's tied to the average fare and the use of past discounts, where ridership and also the month of September also has a school issue here, where we had more school days because I believe we started slightly after Labor Day, which was earlier this year. But we can get back to you on some more precise accounting for that.
I'd like to introduce Tom Charles for Paratransit.
Thank you. Good morning. Paratransit report is on page 13. For the month of September 2012, accessorized paratransit ridership was up 1.6% compared to September 2011 levels. 12-month ridership levels were up by 6.8%. Over the 12-month period ending September 2012, there was a 2.1% increase in the monthly average of accessorized requests for service. The favorable no-show trend continued in the month of September as accessorized passenger no-shows declined by 16.3% compared to September 2011 levels. This completes the paratransit report.
You see the paratransit ridership is up 1.6%, but the revenue is up 2.4%. They did it the right way.
Right.
We won't comment on their cost recovery ratio. Okay, the September ridership report is shown on page 12 of the committee book. For the month of September 2012, overall average weekday ridership increased by 1.4% when compared to September 2011. MTA bus average weekday ridership rose by 2.2% in September 2012, and New York City Transit bus increased by 1.2% for the same period compared to the prior September. Average weekend ridership in September was down at New York City Transit Bus by 0.7, but increased by 4.3% at MTA Bus. Express bus ridership on weekdays increased at New York City Transit by 4.1% in September and increased by 0.8% at MTA Bus. Moving on to the revenue and expense budget report that's summarized on page 21, year-to-date September 2012 fare box revenues are slightly lower than forecast for both New York City Transit and MTA Bus by 0.7 and 0.3%, respectively. Overall, fixed route fare box revenues are $4.8 million, or 0.6% lower than the forecast of $801 million through September 2012. On the expense side, bus operations September 2012 year-to-date non-reimbursable accrued expenses reflect a favorable variance of 1%, or $21 million, as New York City Transit Bus and MTA Bus are favorable to forecast levels by 19.5 and 1.6 million, respectively. Now, the performance against forecast is a combination of favorable non-labor expenses of $42.3 million, partially offset by unfavorable labor expenses of $21.3 million. The favorable non-labor expenses are mainly due to the use of lower-cost taxis and vouchers for paratransit contracts, the favorable maintenance and operating contract expenditures, and the timing of maintenance, timing of materials and supplies, as well as fuel spending. Labor expenses, which were unfavorable, were the result of overtime, payroll, and pension costs. This concludes the finance and ridership reports. Any questions? Okay. Moving on to procurements. There are a total of 6 procurement actions for the committee's approval this month, 1 non-competitive and 5 competitive, representing a total expenditure of $172.6 million, beginning on page 61 of the book. These procurements include those that were originally scheduled for October, as well as those added in November. There are staff present to answer questions regarding any of the 6 procurements now.
Are there any questions regarding the procurements? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move they be adopted.
Seconded. Any questions or comments? There being none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
I just have one quick question. Has New Flyer spoken about ever opening a plant in the U.S.? But we give them a lot of business. It would be
Steve.
They've been pursuing identifying a location.
You mean New York State, not
Yeah.
U.S.
New York State.
Right.
Yeah, they've been pursuing a facility, but they're really not going to move to a production facility in New York. They already have 3 production facilities. What they're looking to do is identify a location for warranty, repair, parts, distribution, and like that. They're pretty well invested in some other areas already. But they are looking, and over time they have increased their participation in New York through subcontractors.
Thank you. Okay. Now, Norm Silverman for the service change items.
Good morning. There's 1 bus route service change and staff summary outlining and 1 MTA bus schedule change staff summary for January 2013 are included as information in this month's agenda. In terms of the bus route change, it affects the Q7 eastbound travel path in the East New York area. This change provides for a more streamlined path, symmetrical with the current westbound path. It is consistent with many of our past efforts to provide more direct, faster, and reliable service.
That and the fact that Pitkin Avenue is a much higher commercial corridor than Glenmore.
That's correct.
Makes a lot of sense.
That's correct. In terms of the bus schedule changes, this is our second version. You'll remember that we did one for September. This is our second effort to do that. We're implementing a number of changes in January 2013, which include a total of 16 schedule changes affecting 14 routes. These changes are a product of our continuing efforts to review and revise bus schedules to ensure that they are accurately meet customer demand and are in full compliance with board-adopted loading guidelines. In keeping with these goals, 5 of the schedule changes entail increases in service frequency and/or spans of service, and 11 entail decreases in service frequency. There was 1 small little typo that I'll bring to your attention on the schedule changes. On the first table, on the weekday table, on the B103, The current span is incorrectly shown a little earlier than it really is right now. It runs from 5 a.m. to 11:45 p.m., not 10:30 p.m., and we're increasing it by 45 minutes. That increase has a lot to do with what we anticipate happening at the Barclays Center. And similarly for Saturday, it's shown as its current span to 11:41. That's supposed to be 11:45. Otherwise, everything is correct in the report.
Yes, Andrew?
Norm, maybe I'm not getting this, but on the Saturday, for instance, on the Q101, I see a slight change in the span, but I see no change in the headways.
Right. We're not changing we're just changing the hours of service. We're not changing the frequency.
Now, when you do something as obviously minor as this, how is the public notified? Are there new guide-a-rides put up? Or?
Well, the guide-a-ride program at MTA Bus is an evolving program as we got HASTAS. If you remember going back in time, the automated scheduling program enables us to do it. There are not guide-a-rides up in Q101 lit. Generally, such a small change.
You put signs in the buses, maybe?
Yeah, we'll put some signs in the bus. We'll do that. It's only a 10-minute change, as you can see, but we will do some signs. And we're working to get the guide-a-rides up in concert with the bus time program as well.
Thanks.
I believe that the New York City Department of Transportation has helped with transportation to the Barclays Center by making it impossible to get there by anything other than buses or subways. If you would like us to keep that up, because mass transportation is the only way that works to get there.
We agree. Are there any other questions?
Design?
If not, I'll turn it back to Tom Del Sorbo for concluding comments.
That concludes our agenda today. If there are any final questions, we'll take them now.
If there are any questions or comments for the bus folks? There being none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second? Thank you.